is brewing. It's the U.S. versus China, two arch rivals out to get each other. Xi Jinping wants to beat America. Donald Trump wants to single out China. The power play is on. Tonight we'll tell you about three big moves that America has made. Targeted attacks to hurt China. First, military posturing. Second, consulate battles. And third, going after Chinese hackers. The U.S. is at it. Let's start with America's military response to China's aggression. The United States is equipping and positioning its forces across Asia. You can call this the military component of Donald Trump's China strategy. U.S. Secretary of Defense Mark Esper has outlined the plan. The U.S. is sending Navy ships to Asia. It is selling arms to Taiwan. America is basically creating and arming an alliance on the high seas. Remember, China has been very active here. Chinese ships have been active in the South China Sea and around Taiwan. Now, Esper said that these activities by China are destabilizing the entire region and America wishes to counter it. A key part of America's strategy will be India. The U.S. Secretary of Defense brought up the recent naval exercise off the coast of Andaman and Nicobar Islands. Esper says such exercises are an effort to project power.
I think the recent exercise ongoing between the Indian Navy and the USS Nimitz just shows the growing cooperation between our countries and our ability, the United States' ability to project power into the region and to sustain it, by the way, with our allies and partners.
So America is boosting its military presence to contain China's military aggression. And this is just one part of the plan. Here is the second part, or the second big move. America has ordered China to shut down its consulate in Houston within 72 hours. Why? Because American officials believe that this diplomatic outpost was used for spying, for expanding Chinese influence in America. So this order is a diplomatic retaliation. Washington has not shared the specifics, but it has constantly accused China of attempts to steal commercial and military secrets, a charge that China continues to deny. You know what they say? There's no smoke without fire. It literally applies to China. China says it does not snoop. Very well. Then how will Beijing explain these pictures? On your screen right now is the Chinese consulate in Houston. You can see smoke billowing out of the building. Was this property on fire? It wasn't. So where is the smoke coming from? Papers were being burnt here. Chinese diplomats were seen dumping paper into flaming barrels. This was hours after the Trump administration asked China to close the consulate. What is it that they were trying to destroy? If China is not snooping, then why were Chinese diplomats burning documents? We don't know. And it's impossible to know for sure, in fact. Unless, of course, the Chinese choose to share, but we are reasonable in our expectations. As for the consulate, China has sovereignty over it. According to international rules, no one can enter or leave without China's permission. Technically, not even the Americans. But they can make statements, and they're making some very serious ones, accusing China of spying. U.S. investigators say it is not just Chinese missions that snoop. They say China has hired hackers. They're stealing coronavirus vaccine research, not just in America, but around the world. Which brings us to the third American move against China. The U.S. has charged two former electrical engineering students. They're private hackers. They worked for money. They also received support from the Chinese intelligence agents. Two firms were allegedly targeted, a biotech firm, this is in Massachusetts, that was researching possible cures for the Wuhan virus, and a Maryland company that was conducting research on the virus. The disclosures do not end there. This document and this indictment has exposed a bigger spying operation, one that the world should worry about. Meanwhile, there's talk of Cold War 2.0. That's the new buzzword. On one side is America and allies. On the other, China and Russia. Suspicion, hostility, aggression, military muscle flexing without exchanging fire. This is what's happening right now. Standard characteristics of Cold War. Something that played out from 1945 to the end of the 1980s. US versus USSR. These were the two parties then. Now America is taking on China and recruiting allies. One clear ally is Australia. It is effectively edging towards a breakup with China. Trade ties have been disrupted, and this is serious, China and Australia. China is Australia's biggest export market. China makes up 30% of Australia's exports, close to 7% of its GDP. Chinese students and tourists bring big money to Australia, and China is leveraging all of this. It has blocked beef and barley imports from Australia after Prime Minister Scott Morrison demanded an investigation into the outbreak. But Australia remains firm. The Prime Minister had this message for China.
Stress again that what the Australian government is doing is completely unremarkable. We are standing our ground on our values and the things that we know are always important. I'm not aware if there are things that Australia has decisions that we've taken in our national interest, then they are regularly raised in the discussions that I have with Chinese leaders.
Australia won't back down. Then we have Japan. Japan's chief cabinet secretary has spoken about the Uyghurs in China. Yoshihide Suga was addressing the press when he was asked a question about the Uyghurs. The Japanese leader said Tokyo is watching China closely.
Japan recognizes that it is important for international universal values, namely freedom, basic human rights, and the rule of law are ensured in China. And we are watching the human rights situation in the Xinjiang Uyghur Autonomous Region with concern.
Japan is also working overtime to pull its businesses out of China. What about the United States? Donald Trump is famous for his U-turns. But for days now, he has been taking on China. Yesterday, in an interview, he did it again. More dramatic this time. Trump threatened to kill America's diplomatic relationship with China. He blamed the Chinese government for spreading the virus. And he said that he does not want to speak to Xi Jinping.
Terrible thing happened, and you can look at it as a source. It took place at a certain point, and it could have been put out, and it should have been put out. And we asked to go over, and they said no. They didn't want our help. And I figured that was okay because they must know what they're doing. So it was either stupidity, incompetence, or it was deliberate, one or the other.
He sounds like he broke up. Strong words there. Quintessential Trump. Sure enough, China had a response to what he said. The messenger was Zhao Lijian. His tone was measured when asked about Trump's response, but he seemed to lose his cool when Taiwan was mentioned.
Since the outbreak of COVID-19, the Taiwan Democratic Progressive Party has used the epidemic to engage in political manipulation. It continues to hype the issue of Taiwan's so-called participation in the World Health Assembly. Its true purpose is to seek foreign support and seek independence with the epidemic issue. We are firmly opposed to this. Their attempt will never succeed.
The hostility is evident. Trump is blaming China for failing to control the outbreak. He's also blaming China for his own failings, and why not? Plus, he has found allies, and he's looking for more. Recently, U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo held a video conference with foreign ministers of 7 countries. The idea was to get them on board against China. Indian External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar was part of this digital meeting. Israel and South Korea were among the other participants. Reports say the conversation lasted about 75 minutes. For the U.S., the focus was on making China pay, restructuring supply chains, and denting China's domination over world trade. The confrontation could escalate on Monday when WHO members meet for the World Health Assembly. Not in person, but on video conference, thanks to the Wuhan virus.
The dispute between the United States and China is about much more than trade. For everything from blockbuster films to lunar exploration, from semiconductors to submarines, in every domain, they're now rivals. Superpower relations have soured. America thinks that China is stealing secrets, stealing its way to dominance. And then it looks at Chinese behavior in the South China Sea and bullying countries like Canada and Sweden, and it thinks that China's beginning to challenge global norms. But it looks very different from Beijing. From its point of view, America's trying to block its entirely justified rise. For everyone else, it seems like the beginnings of a new kind of Cold War, a Cold War that everybody could lose. Of course, America has fought a Cold War before with the Soviet Union, and it won. So why not just do the same thing again and cut China off, isolate it economically? Well, it's a bit more complicated than that. In the late 1980s, the United States and the Soviet Union did about $2 billion worth of trade a year. Today, China and the United States do $2 billion worth of trade a day. And then there are the allies who helped America in the first Cold War with the Soviet Union. Well, they do a lot of business with China. They want to be able to trade with it. It would cost them a lot to stop. So to persuade them that they must choose security over their own prosperity would be very hard indeed. The first thing is that the United States needs to build on its strengths. These are often institutions and alliances, the institutions that the United States built after the Second World War. The second thing the United States needs to do is to shore up its defenses. And that means defending itself militarily, through cyber and space, but also defending its technology. But the third thing is that the United States and China need to learn how to live together in a low-trust world. China and America don't have to agree about everything in order to agree that they should live by some global norms. So you need to find ways to build trust over North Korea, say, over rules for cyber war or space war. China is challenging America in every domain. Business and a profit motive are no longer enough to keep this relationship together. What the relationship desperately needs is the building of trust and the building of rules. Unfortunately, just now, both sides see rules as something to break.